You're lying in bed at 3 a.m. Your heart is hammering against your ribs like it's trying to escape. You just woke from a nightmare you can't remember, but your hands won't stop shaking. Your sheets are soaked through with sweat, and somewhere deep in your chest, there's this feeling, this knowing that something terrible happened. You just can't remember what. Your body keeps the score, even when your brain tries to erase it. There are people walking around right now, going to work, making dinner, scrolling through their phones, and inside them is a war they don't even know they're fighting. Their past is hunting them through their nervous system. Every flinch, every unexplained panic attack, every night they can't sleep. Their body is screaming what their mind refuses to hear. Maybe you're one of them. In 1994, psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk published research that changed everything we knew about trauma. He found that traumatic experiences don't just live in your memory. They embed themselves in your nervous system, in your muscles, in the way your body moves through the world. You can forget the event completely. Your conscious mind can lock it away so deep you swear it never happened. But your body never forgets. This is why you flinch when someone raises their hand too quickly, even in a harmless gesture. Why certain smells make your stomach drop. Why you have chronic pain that no doctor can explain. Migraines that appear from nowhere. Digestive problems that started years ago and never left. Insomnia that medication can't touch. Your body is trying to tell you something. You were 7 years old. Someone you trusted did something that made you feel small and wrong. Maybe it happened once. Maybe it happened so many times you stopped counting. Your child brain couldn't process it, couldn't hold it, so it did what it had to do. It buried it, locked it in a box, and threw away the key. And you grew up thinking you were fine, but the mind has a way of protecting you until it doesn't. The cracks start showing in your 20s, your 30s. You're driving to work, and suddenly you're not there anymore. You've lost 5 minutes, and you don't know where they went. You're in a meeting, and your boss is talking, but you're watching yourself from across the room, like you're floating above your own body. Psychologists call this dissociation, your mind stepping out of a reality that feels too overwhelming to inhabit. Or maybe it shows up as hypervigilance. You call it being responsible, being prepared, staying on top of things. But really, you can't relax, ever. You need to control everything, because the world feels dangerous in a way you can't explain. You scan every room you enter for exits. You need to know where everyone is at all times. You wake up exhausted because even in sleep, some part of you is still standing guard. There was a patient in Boston, a woman in her 40s. She came in complaining of severe panic attacks. No history of anxiety, she said. Nothing traumatic in her past. But when the therapist had her do a simple body scan meditation, she started sobbing. Her body was holding memories her conscious mind had completely erased. When she was 6, her uncle had hurt her. She had no cognitive memory of this. But her body remembered every detail. And then there are the emotional flashbacks. These are the cruelest. You're not remembering anything specific. There's no image, no narrative. Just pure emotion slamming into you like a freight train. Rage so intense you want to destroy something. Terror that makes you want to run. Shame so thick you can barely breathe. And you have no idea where it's coming from. So you assume there's something wrong with you. That you're broken, that you're crazy. This is where things get dangerous. Because when these fragments start breaking through, when the vault your mind built starts cracking open, everything becomes unstable. The nightmares get worse. They're not vague anymore. They're specific, visceral. You wake up and you can still feel hands on you. You can smell something you can't identify, but it makes you want to vomit. Your brain is trying to show you something, and you're terrified of what it is. Trust becomes impossible. You can't let anyone get close because closeness feels like a threat. You push away the people who care about you, or worse, you cling to people who hurt you because that pain feels familiar, pain you understand, pain you know how to navigate. Safety feels more frightening than danger because you don't have a script for safety, so you cope the only way you know how. Maybe it's alcohol, because when you drink, the noise in your head finally quiets down. Maybe it's pills, or gambling, or sex with strangers, or cutting yourself in places no one will see. You're not trying to die, you're trying to feel something you can control, something that makes sense. The pain you inflict on yourself is pain you chose, and that feels like power. In the 1980s, researchers studying repressed memory documented hundreds of cases like this. People who had no conscious memory of childhood abuse until something triggered the memories to surface. A smell, a sound, a particular tone of voice. The research was controversial. Some people insisted that these memories couldn't be trusted, that therapists were planting false memories. But the pattern was undeniable. The body was telling a story the mind had tried to erase. And then comes the moment everything shatters. You're at the grocery store, or at dinner with friends, or alone in your apartment, and suddenly the floor drops out from under you. Reality fractures. The walls are breathing. You can hear voices that aren't there. Or maybe you're convinced that everyone is watching you, that there's a conspiracy, that you're not safe. Your mind has decided that actual reality is too painful to bear, so it's creating an alternative. One where the threat is external, one where the monster isn't in your past, but in your present, where you can see it, name it, fight it. Psychologists call this an acute psychotic episode, when the gap between what happened to you and what you can consciously accept becomes too wide. The mind breaks. This isn't weakness. This is a nervous system that's been pushed past its capacity to cope. Your brain is doing what it thinks it needs to do to survive. A psychotic break is different from a nervous breakdown. A breakdown is when you're so overwhelmed you can't function anymore. You can't get out of bed. You can't work. You can't maintain the performance of being okay. But you still know what's real. A psychotic break is when the line between real and unreal dissolves. Hallucinations, delusions, complete dissociation from consensus reality. You're not in touch with what others call the real world, because the real world became uninhabitable. In the 1950s and 60s, people experiencing these breaks were thrown into institutions and subjected to electroshock therapy, lobotomies, chemical sedation. Society didn't understand that these weren't defective brains. These were brains trying to survive unbearable truths. The treatments often cause more damage than the original trauma. Right now, you might be reading the signs in your own life. The dissociation is getting worse. You're losing more time. The nightmares are intensifying. You're having thoughts that scare you. Paranoia is creeping in. You're starting to doubt your own perception of reality. This doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're reaching a threshold, and you need help before you cross it. The path forward exists, but it requires facing the thing your mind has been protecting you from. Trauma therapy works differently than regular therapy. EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, helps your brain reprocess traumatic memories so they're no longer stuck in your nervous system. Somatic experiencing works directly with the body, helping you release the trauma stored in your muscles and organs. These aren't just talk therapies. They're methods that address where the trauma actually lives. But here's what most people don't understand. You can't process trauma until you feel safe. If you're still in survival mode, if your nervous system is still in constant threat response, trying to dig into those memories will only re-traumatize you. Safety first. This means finding a therapist you trust, creating routines that help you feel grounded, building a support system, getting your basic needs met, sleep, food, a place where you feel secure. When you're in the middle of an acute episode, when reality is slipping, there are grounding techniques that can help. 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste. This pulls you back into your body, back into the present moment. Cold water on your face, ice cubes in your hands. These physical sensations can interrupt dissociation. Medication can be a tool. Antipsychotics can stabilize you when you're in crisis. Antidepressants can lift you out of the depression that often accompanies trauma. But medication alone won't heal the root cause. It's a bridge, not a destination. It gets you stable enough to do the real work. And the real work is hard. It's sitting with a therapist and finally naming what happened. It's feeling the emotions your child self couldn't process. It's grieving what was taken from you. It's learning that what happened to you wasn't your fault. That you survived the only way you could. That the coping mechanisms that kept you alive then are destroying you now, and it's time to find new ones. Community matters more than most people realize. When you've experienced severe trauma, isolation becomes your default, but healing happens in connection. Support groups, people who have been through similar experiences. They remind you that you're not alone, that this pattern of falling apart and barely holding it together is something others understand. You don't have to perform normalcy with them. Here's one concrete thing you can do today. Write down 3 moments when you felt safe. Really safe. Even if they were brief. Maybe it was sitting in your grandmother's kitchen. Maybe it was petting your dog. Maybe it was that one teacher who saw you. Your nervous system needs to remember that safety exists, that it's possible. Start collecting evidence of safety the way you've collected evidence of danger. You're lying in bed at 3 a.m. again. Your heart is still racing. Your hands are still shaking. But this time, you know what's happening. Your body is trying to tell you something. And instead of pushing it away, instead of numbing it or running from it, you're listening. You're saying, I hear you. I know something happened, and we're going to figure this out together. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll take 3 steps forward. Some days you'll fall back 5. There will be nights when the past wins, when the nightmares drag you under and you wake up feeling like you're drowning all over again. This doesn't mean you're failing. This means you're human. This means you're doing the hardest work there is. Your mind didn't fall apart because it was weak. It fell apart because it was protecting you. And now it's time to teach it that you're strong enough to handle the truth. What would you do if you knew your mind was trying to protect you by falling apart?